Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our message for January 15th of 2023. Today's talk is the metaphysical meaning of the Epiphany. So right now, most of us are now back at work or school or just cleaning up after the holidays or even cleaning up after all the storms we've had. And even those who don't have any daily commitments are really probably back into the groove of their own normal life. And right now, Christmas probably seems a long time ago, and our minds actually may have turned, if you're anything like me, wondering when spring is going to appear, especially after all the rain and storms we've had. However, today we are going to go back in time a couple of weeks to the 6th of January. And this is actually one of the great feasts of the Christian churches. It's called Epiphany, and it marks the coming of the Magi to visit Jesus. In the Eastern churches, because of the way the calendar is different, this is actually, or the 6th is actually the day of Christmas itself. You know, in the Nativity story, Jesus is born into relative poverty and obscurity in Bethlehem. Mary and Joseph have been visited by angels who have foretold his birth, and by this time he has been born. The angels have also imparted the good news to the shepherds who have come and are worshiping him. In the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, Charles Fillmore writes that shepherds metaphysically are the protecting entities of God that come to watch over us both day and night. They are the conservers and the protectors sent from God. So metaphysically speaking, we could say that God's protection was surrounding the Christ child at the time of his birth. And more than that, that same protecting energy is surrounding us and has been from our birth. Yet the addition of the Magi to the story adds a whole new dimension. There is some dispute among theologians and historians as to exactly who the Magi were. Matthew's gospel uses the word magians, which seems to imply that they were Zoroastrians, the ancient faith of Persia, and that they may have actually been priests in that region. They probably weren't kings, but of course they may well have been considered wise men, as the traditional translation has had it. And there's a dispute actually over how many actually came to see the baby. Some say there were 3, and other records say there were up to 12 that came. That they came to Jerusalem in search of the baby, Jesus, is significant because Zoroastrians were those who had an expectation of a Messiah-like figure. Others think that the Magi were, in fact, Babylonian rather than Persian, but that really doesn't matter in the context of the story that we're talking about. The significance is that they were not Jewish and yet recognized something special and unique in Jesus. They kneeled down before him and offered gifts, showing the importance that they placed on him. And this is the first indication we have in the life of Jesus that his ministry will not be just for Israel, but for people of all nations. And although it took his followers many years to see it, this was the moment where it was first revealed that the Messiah would come not only for the Jewish people, but for people of all backgrounds, ethnicities, nationalities. So this is why for many hundreds of years, the church in both the East and West have considered the Epiphany, which literally means sudden realization, so important. It was the point at which Jesus began to be revealed as the Messiah for the whole world. Now, the Magi were men belonging to various educated classes. They were of noble birth, educated, wealthy, and influential. They were philosophers, the counselors of rulers, learned in all the wisdom and the ancient philosophies of the East. So they had apparently studied the Hebrew scriptures, in particular, the messianic prophecies of the Old Testament. Among these, they found the words of Balaam, "A star shall come out of Jacob, a scepter shall rise out of Israel." And they certainly were acquainted with the prophecy of Micah, "But you, O Bethlehem, through you are little among those thousands of Judah, yet out of you shall come forth to me the one to be ruler in Israel." So they probably also knew and understood the time prophecy of Daniel regarding the appearance of the Messiah, and came to the conclusion that his coming was actually very near. So let's start with the Magi. Even though there's discrepancies as to how many there were, let's just stay with the more accepted one, that there were 3 of them. So they have become known most commonly as Balthasar, Melchior, and Gaspar. And these 3 came from the East to worship Jesus. Metaphysically speaking, the East is the within. As used in Matthew chapter 2, verse 1, the word in the original is plural, thus from the regions of interior wisdom, from thoughts of reverence and rich gifts of substance, understanding, and every spiritual help. For the Christ child, we could say that the inner qualities of what the Magi represent is beginning to come forth, even at his birth, and that the growth in consciousness has already begun. On the night of Christ's birth, a mysterious light appeared in the sky, which became a luminous star that persisted in the western heavens. So impressed with what they were seeing, the wise men turned once more to the sacred scrolls. And as they tried to understand the meaning of the sacred writings, they determined to go in search of the Messiah. And like Abraham, they knew not at first where they were to go, but followed as the guiding star led them on their way. So metaphysically, the star that the wise men saw in the East represents intuition. The wise men were guided by their intuition. Once again, coming from the East, from within, their intuition came from within. And stars represent subjective and not fully understood guiding lights. And what do the 3 wise men represent? The stored up resources of the soul, which rise to the surface when its depths are stirred by a great spiritual revelation. And they are the inner realms of consciousness that the books of life have kept the records of past life and held them in reserve for the day when the soul would receive them. And this all comes from the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary. So these wise men represent the wisdom that is carried within the soul from previous incarnations. They bring gifts to the Christ child, the inner resources of spirit, which are open to the Christ mind. Gold was a present for a king, the most precious metal of that day, symbolizing royalty. The wise men recognized that this was no ordinary child. This was King Jesus, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. They didn't cuddle this child, but bowed in front of him, in reverence to him. And metaphysically, gold represents the riches of spirit. We could say that the idea that all that the Father has, I am. All that the Father is, I am, is one of the deepest riches that spirit has to offer us. We could say that the energy of this Magi was bringing this inner awareness to Jesus of who he really was, one of source itself. Then we have frankincense. If gold was a gift of wealth for a king, then frankincense was used to worship the king. And these wise men recognized the pureness of Jesus, deserving of their worship. And it states in the Bible, and when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary, his mother, and fell down and worshiped him. So metaphysically, frankincense represents the beauty of spirit. In other words, pure, clear, unadulterated. And this is what Jesus was. And actually, this is what we are at our core. So no matter what we have done, said, or expressed in any way, at our core, we are the pure, clear, unadulterated expression of Source. We are beautiful at our core. And then we have myrrh. And with myrrh, we have a bit of a different usage for that herb. The third gift they brought was myrrh, which was a valuable substance used to embalm the dead. And stop and think about this significance. Bringing a brand new child something to embalm the dead. However, they recognized that this little one was born to die. However, metaphysically, myrrh means the eternity of spirit. So although on the earth plane of existence, myrrh is for embalming the dead, it was actually meant to impart into Jesus the energy of the knowledge of the eternity of his soul, his true being. The gospel, according to Matthew, relates how at Jerusalem, the Magi attracted the interest of King Herod I of Judea by announcing Jesus's birth. They asked him, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we have observed his star at his rising and have come to pay him homage." So, having already learned the place of Jesus's birth from the priests and the scribes, Herod extracted from the Magi the exact date on which the star heralding the birth appeared as confirmation of the biblical prophecy. He then sent them to see the infant Jesus, requesting they disclose upon their return the exact location. So they continued on to Bethlehem, where they worshiped Jesus and offered him his gifts. So metaphysically, Herod is the ruling will of the physical, the ego in the sense consciousness. It does not understand man's true origin or the law of man's being. It is narrow, jealous, destructive, and under its rule, humankind does not fulfill the law of its being. Herod, or our sense consciousness, rules on the plane of mortality. If allowed full reign, it kills out the redemptive state of mind, only to keep us locked in our own destructive state of mind. So to sum all this up, our intuition, the star, begins to glow within us. When our soul opens and awakens to receive the information from our many past lives and our many journeys on earth, they begin to rise up and come into our presence. Coming from the east, the three wise men. And this all comes from within us. The protecting entities of God, the shepherds, are always here to watch over us all the time and give us the guidance we need if we learn to tune into them and pay attention. And as we learn to tune into our guides and listen to our intuition, we are gifted with the riches of spirit, the beauty of spirit, and the undeniable knowledge of the eternity of our spirit, our souls, of who we truly are. So my wish for you today is that may your journey on this planet during 2023 be one of discovery of all you truly are, the light of Source on this planet. So much love, everyone. A very happy, peace-filled, and prosperous 2023. May God bless each and every one of you, protect you, guide you, and assist you in listening to your intuition. God bless, and have a beautiful week.